Hello, and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News Channel. Today, I'm actually going to talk about a response to this $10 million Bitcoin video. Now, he does make some good points in this video, like how the world has a lot of debt. I mean, the world runs on debt, so that is kind of a tricky issue. It's not actually as bad as it sounds. And also the whole Bitcoin empowering people, being kind of like a P2P currency that empowers the unbanked and stuff. I'm not really sure how that's going to go because in every society we've had unbanked people, we've had the powerful people, and they always find some way to actually stay in control. I think if you're really moving into Bitcoin, you're just going to shift the power from one group of people to the other group of people. The technology is actually really interesting. And the $10 million value, if you take all the assets, if you put them all together in the world, there's about $240 trillion worth of actual value. And that's just like property, total property values, total money values, everything. The derivatives market, people say it's 1.2 quadrillion, but the 1.2 quadrillion is not all value. The actual settled value of the derivatives is something like 14, 15 trillion or something like that. So a very small amount of that is actually settled value for derivatives. So the entire net worth of the world, you can just Google it. It's about 240 trillion right now in terms of net worth. Now, if aliens were to buy the Earth and buy like all the core and everything, it'd be worth a couple of quadrillion. But obviously, you really can't count that in today's net worth. We don't have access to all of it, and there are things in the quadrillions that we will never actually have access to. So the net value of the world is 240 trillion. Is What's actually really interesting is that if you actually take the 240 trillion and then you divide it by the 21 million bitcoins there are, it actually does come out to be about $10 million. But that means Bitcoin is going to represent every bit of value on Earth. And obviously, that's not the case. I think in the best case scenario, the cryptocurrency market can actually represent all the value on Earth. And the cryptocurrency market can actually perhaps reach 240 trillion together. But that actually won't be Bitcoin because Bitcoin, I think right now people have realized that the scaling is an issue. You have SegWit and Lightning, or mainly SegWit right now, but Bitcoin might be best used as a store of value. People do use it to purchase big items, but it might be actually best used as a store of value. It can actually be kind of like gold. There's only 21 million Bitcoins, and the price of Bitcoin will actually edge up if you do that because there's an X amount of Bitcoin that are lost each day. Like deflationary cryptocurrencies that can't expand and burn each year, and static cryptocurrencies where you can't expand the supply of, I actually don't think are very fit to be like the consistent monetary spend unit of the future. Because you need something that at most is stable and doesn't really deflate. Because otherwise you're going to get fewer and fewer coins. And in crypto, it's not like fiat money, where if you rip up a dollar bill, you can just print another one. That doesn't work. That's one of the strengths of cryptos because people can't inflate it, but it's also one of the weaknesses because you can't replace what's lost. I do think that they actually need to create a chain where they actually average in, they can actually decide how many coins that uh, by consensus they actually need to decide by consensus a small percentage of inflation each year to counteract the amount that is lost. People lose a lot of Bitcoin, and I think actually, like, if you even put the amount of inflation at 1.1%, like 1% or something, it won't counter the amount that's actually lost because at least right now, there's people that actually lose a lot of cryptocurrency, lose wallet keys each year. I believe something like a fourth of all Bitcoin has actually been lost. So that part isn't really part of the supply anymore. And if you keep having people that lose Bitcoin, eventually you're going to get to very, very few Bitcoins in the world. And if you need to distribute it to a large amount of people, even if it's in Satoshi, the supply squeeze and how to value things will actually be very problematic in the future. So I do think you do need a coin with a slight bit of inflation priced in to counter the amount of coins that are lost. Of course, you should be able to, lower that inflation rate. And I think that inflation rate should only be around 1%. Either lower that inflation rate or nix it altogether by consensus if it's discovered that people aren't really people aren't really losing the coins anymore. I mean, one way you could do it is like say the maximum amount that you can inflate is like 1.5 a year, but by consensus you can actually lower that amount each year, but it can never be above 1.5, something like that, because you actually need to keep I believe you actually need to keep a steady supply and not a continuously shrinking supply. Continuously shrinking supply I don't really think works as well. I think deflation I think is just as dangerous for the economy as inflation. So I personally do not think that Bitcoin is actually suited for that, because I do think you need a coin that actually has a mechanism that's actually built in to replace lost coins each year. I don't know how you would determine the lost coins, but there are certain cases of Bitcoin like, oh, this 1 million Bitcoin is not available anymore, so you should just be able to write that 1 million off and create new Bitcoin to replace that 1 million. I'm not exactly sure how that technology works, but they're pretty smart. They can actually innovate that kind of stuff, and that would actually work. Of course, it needs to be done by consensus, so people can't actually just create random Bitcoins everywhere. So that's one of the issues. But how much do I think Bitcoin can actually grow to? Well, I actually look at the cap of gold to be somewhat similar to how much Bitcoin can actually grow to. Bitcoin is $10,000 right now. Gold has a market cap of about 7 trillion. So I think each Bitcoin on that aspect can get to about $333,000. That would make the market cap the same as gold. And actually, it's actually the market cap of gold is actually slightly above $7 trillion. So I think each Bitcoin can actually get to about $400,000, which is about 40 times what it is right now. And that's still many years away, but I think that can actually be achievable. I don't think Bitcoin can actually get to $240 trillion, but I think it can get to like 7 trillion. And that's a $400,000 Bitcoin. Now, in the video, it also said that, the author actually said, a lot of, young financial forecasters think that Bitcoin has a 2,000% increase margin, which means from right now to where Bitcoin will eventually be, there's a 20x multiplier. So that would actually put Bitcoin at about 200,000. My initial estimate with gold is 400,000. Now, where will all the other market cap come from? It'll come from other coins. There's XRP. I think that can reach a few $1 trillion, and I think Ethereum or something that eventually replaces Ethereum, one of the two, will actually have the biggest market cap, because that's where all the decentralized applications and all the most of the utility case will actually come in. You see Ethereum right now, and you see enterprises like JP Morgan's running Corium, and then there's a bunch of other tokens like Quant or Chainlink that's actually deployed on Ethereum. I think the big platform, one of the few big platforms, or the few platforms that actually dominate the field, will actually have most of the market cap. And that can grow to tens of trillions or possibly hundreds of trillions if cryptocurrency and that economy overtakes cash. Now, I don't really think cryptocurrency will ever really overtake cash, or not overtake, but replace cash. I do not think governments will actually allow that, and I don't think governments will actually ever relinquish their power to print money, because that is actually their most coveted power. They will switch to CBDCs, or kind of like digital fiat, but digital fiat is just still a digital version of fiat. And if you go to China, or even here in the US with credit, we actually already have that. So I think governments are going to switch to that. They'll make their own blockchains, and that'll take a large portion of the market too. The public ledgers like Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think they can actually reach, tens of trillions of dollars. Maybe it'll reach 100 trillion far off in the future sometime, to be kind of like a parallel version with the current economy. That's where I see Bitcoin and blockchain futures. I think it can grow by leaps and bounds, but I don't think it'll take over the entire world's economic system. I think it'll be a parallel system to the current economy, and I think it can actually in the future grow to hundreds of trillions or like maybe like $100 trillion, or maybe perhaps be equal with the traditional economy, and then you just have a crypto economy that's just as big, maybe 20, 30 years out in the future. It won't be within the next 5-6 years. It will be a more generational thing. The video also talks about how young people, millennials, actually prefer Bitcoin over traditional money and gold. I know that's not true. I mean, I have a lot of friends, and basically me and one or two other ones are the only ones that are really interested in cryptocurrency. Other people's, my other friends who actually have jobs and have high paying salaries, and we all make money, but I'm really the only one that invests in cryptocurrency right now. The rest of them are investing in, you know, tangible assets like gold or houses or things like that. And I don't think you can actually replace gold or silver with cryptocurrencies, mainly because gold and silver is tangible. But outside of the speculative value, there's actually a utility value to gold and silver in that you can actually make jewelry with it. There's a large demand from the jewelry segment, and there's also the gold and silver as elements. They actually have production use, especially silver. So you have actual utility use of the physical, tangible good for gold and silver, and you can't really say that for Bitcoin or any of the cryptocurrencies. And utility derived from math, I have always thought that was a little bit of a fuzzy kind of statement because the US dollar, if you think about it, it's backed by our country's ability to tax and the might of our military. And same thing with other fiats in other countries. If you really think about it, the countries that whose governments are shaky, who don't have a big military, their fiat are the ones that are constantly in trouble, not the countries with a stable government and a large military presence. Their fiat's generally okay for the most part. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies might be backed in mathematical concepts or calculations, but the thing is that's all dependent on trust, and trust can fall apart. And plus, it's all dependent on the network. You shoot one EMP shockwave at us, and the whole thing basically just explodes. So that's really kind of problematic. But I do believe it can be a new economy that can compete with the traditional economy, but it won't replace the traditional economy. And like I said, it's not nearly as the video makes Bitcoin seem like it's permeated a lot more than it actually has right now. I would say like less than 10% of people, even in my generation, the millennials, actually are really that interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Less than 10%. I mean, I've talked to my friends, I've talked to, my cousins are actually interested, but, just millennials, out there, not that many are interested. They kind of know what Bitcoin is, but they're not invested in it. They're really not that interested in it. They're still more interested in traditional assets. We might have to go to the post millennials, the generation below me, maybe 10 or 15 years younger, before they really catch up to that. So it's going to take a long time, but my view of Bitcoin is it can actually reach about $400,000 of today's dollars in the future. And I think, other cryptocurrency, the entire crypto market, its market cap can reach into the tens or $100 trillion, maybe 20, 30 years out, but it's going to be a slow process. You're not going to flip the economic world overnight. But the video $10 million Bitcoin Endgame, and I will actually link that. It is one of the better videos I've seen. It does make some good points, but I think it seriously exaggerates other things. I don't agree with Tom Lee that Bitcoin by itself can reach $10 million. It's not going to be the only coin standing. There's other coins with other utilities, and I think eventually one of the mainnet coins will actually overtake it because that's the coin where the utility and all the decentralized applications are actually going to be built on, whether it be Ethereum or whatever overtakes Ethereum in the future. Now, I know some people are going to comment on this video and say, like, it's Cardano all the way. Okay, fine, but you need to actually release something with Cardano. And maybe when you actually release Shelly, Gongguan, and all that other stuff, maybe you will be the one of the future. Who knows? So that is actually yet to be seen. There's going to be a lot of competition, especially in the mainnet field. And I think there's going to be 3 or 4 survivors, and those are probably going to be the biggest coins of the future. Which one those are, I would actually bet pretty hard on Ethereum and maybe a few of the others that are actually coming up. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of his video too, because I will actually link it in the description of this video. Thank you and have a nice day.